Good evening, and I apologize for this video being so late. It's turned in. We got back from Bible study tonight, and just as I sat down to get this done and recorded, we received a phone call from a lady in our church, and her husband is 78, and he got rushed to the emergency room, and they didn't expect him to make it through the night. So my wife and I ran out. His name is Vernon. Keep him in your prayers if you would. His heart stopped while we were there at the emergency room, and it took him about 3 minutes to be able to use CPR and bring him back. They did get his heart going again. He was able to be conscious, and his wife and I went back and we prayed. We talked with him a little bit. He didn't respond, but they said that he could hear us, and so we prayed. He had tubes down his mouth, so he wasn't able to really acknowledge us or not. So his wife went home to get some rest, and we came on home also. And so I want to finish this video here. And my text is Luke chapter 7, beginning with verse 36 through 50. Then one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him, and he went to the Pharisee's house and sat down to eat. Behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of fragrant oil, and stood at his feet behind him weeping. And she began to wash his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head. She kissed his feet, and anointed them with fragrant oil. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he spoke to himself, saying, This man, if he were a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. Jesus answered and said to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. So he said, Teacher, say it. There was a certain creditor who had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii, the other 50. And when they had nothing from which to repay, he freely forgave them both. Tell me, therefore, which of them will love him more? Simon answered and said, I suppose the one whom he forgave more. And he said to him, You have rightly judged. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has washed my feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head. You gave me no kiss, but this woman has not ceased to kiss my feet since the time I came in. You did not anoint my head with oil, but this woman has anointed my feet with fragrant oil. Therefore I say to you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loves little. Then he said to her, Your sins are forgiven. And those who sat at the table with him began to say to themselves, Who is this who even forgives sins? And he said to the woman, Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Now, I'm going to take my paper here and talking about the ordinary world. People talk in the ordinary world. They stand in the marketplace in different places and they have a conversation. And so here this Pharisee is, who we know as Simon, is talking to Jesus. Seems like ordinary, not everything, going too much of out of the way there. But then, hint of trouble, the Pharisee invites Jesus to his house. Now why? Why would that be? Pharisees, didn't really care for Jesus. They didn't agree with him. But for some reason, Simon, this Pharisee, we know that he thought Jesus may be a prophet, because we know in the story that, he thinks within his mind that if Jesus was a prophet, he would know what manner this woman is that's touching him, and the different acts that she was doing. So Simon began to doubt that Jesus maybe, was even a prophet. And so then this sinful woman, then they get to the house, sinful woman enters into the dinner, and she comes walking into the house. She has a alabaster box of fragrant oil, and she's standing behind Jesus weeping. So she's causing a disturbance there. Everybody's focused on her. They know who she is. from her lifestyle, and so she comes in, she bows down and begins to wash Jesus' feet and so on. And then we have the fact that Jesus turns to Simon, who is now thinking thoughts against this woman, plus against Jesus for allowing this woman to do what she's doing. Jesus shares the story of the two debtors that owes the creditor money. And then Simon answers the question, well, the one that the creditor forgave the most would be the one that loved the creditor the most. And Jesus says, you have rightly judged. Then he turns to the woman and he says, your sins are forgiven. And then because Jesus is willing to forgive the sins, the sinful woman is now changed. There's no doubt in my mind that the sinful woman then realized that she had been forgiven. She was grateful, she was thankful, and she was able to live a free life, being set free out of the bondage of sin, just like we are today. And anybody that comes to Jesus and repents is able to have their sins forgiven. And so that's my plot of the story. That's my story. And God bless you, and thank you for listening to what I had to say.